Hi everyone, delonewolf here, and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And as always, we'll start with some news when it comes to EVE Online. And while the expansion is rather fresh, I have to say there's a lot of stuff happening at the moment in EVE Online. And first of all, I want to mention that a new standard overview that is probably going to be heavily based on the Ziria Sunday overview, ZS overview, is now out on testing, and CCP is planning to deploy that to TQ. If you have the time, I would definitely recommend that you take a look, both for yourself to get prepared on what all of a sudden your standard overview may look like, but also to help with the testing, because if there's one thing that I think we all want to be as good as possible, it would be the standard overview from CCP. Even for new players, I've constantly seen it mentioned in dev blogs and things like that, that the standard overview that they get now should be like enough for new players. But I personally remember that if there's one thing that you would love to get as much information and as many tools and tweaks and things like that, options as possible, it would be UI options in the game. Very first thing that I would do starting out playing World of Warcraft when I came back for a couple of expansions was to download overview packs and set the overview the way I want to. So I think that a little bit more would actually be welcomed by new players, but looks like CCP is planning to do that. Second thing I want to mention is of course the Alliance tournament. That's also going to happen this weekend, so if you want to follow the PvP action, maybe get some cool fights, some cool feeding ideas, or just join the PvP community, head over to CCP's Twitch channel. You can take a look at that there. And from what I'm reading, actually, a lot of people are enjoying the expansion, and faction warfare seems to be having a great time. So I personally can't wait to see how everything evolves, and then how the allegiance systems will work, so that we can actually participate in some way, help our own faction of choice, and be a part of the current hype, the current focus on the story, and all of that good stuff. So hopefully we get more scope videos. Hopefully we get much more information from CCP, but yeah, I think that it's very, very promising at the moment, and I'm enjoying my time in EVE Online, although I'm not going out there in faction warfare doing a lot of stuff, but I'm working on my heraldry, I'm working on my Alliance logo for many ships, as many as I can grab, and I got the Wraith done, so that's going to become my standard fast transport, so that I can show off the Alliance logo while I dock and undock from Jeddah. It's going pretty damn well. And then last bit of news that I definitely want to mention as well is that Johnny Pugh is back. We missed him for a very long time. I remember I actually had a chat with him when he decided that it was time to focus on real life and to stop playing EVE Online. But I think I already mentioned that back then as well, that you don't quit EVE, you only take breaks, sometimes very long breaks, and that was his case here, but he is back, and it does show that I think EVE is very, very difficult to definitively win. You always end up back at our favorite Roach Motel. So welcome back. If you don't know who he is, he actually makes, or used to make, and has made a new EVE Online video about this system here, the air career system, which on this character I haven't really done anything for, but on my main I actually enjoyed that quite a little bit as well. There's still a lot of stuff that I need to do, but yeah, he's back, and hopefully he can make some more EVE content as well. He has been, I think, the largest content creator for EVE Online for a while, so pretty good to see that all of that stuff is coming full circle as well. Next up, quick look at the New Eden store. Let's see if there's anything happening here. We actually have sales happening on quite a few skins. Broodix, Blood Raider, Bargists, Angel Hex bundles as well. Yeah, quite a few. So if you want to take a look at those, definitely browse through them if any of these are things that you want. And then on the service front, just, you know, the new stuff, batches for daily alpha injectors and multiple pilot train certificates. And then we get bundle prices, but no sales to report in the services at the moment. So let's dive right in then into the pilot services and see what the impact for the expansion and no sales mean for the market. Coming in at 5 minutes. There we go. Let's get started as always with Plex, and we will start on the chart. There we go. So we are for the average price, we're still below the 5 million. You can see on the ticker, or you may have seen on the ticker, that we reached 5 million yet again for the sellers for the Plex market. You can also see that that max price sometimes goes just above that. Still a little bit bugged on today, but the daily averages are 4.9 million, just below the 5, but you can also start to see that we're moving sideways now, right? Months before this, especially from May to August, after the change to real life costs for EVE Online, we had this upwards trajectory up to the 4.5 million. Here we start to hesitate a little bit, couple of spikes, couple of sales and things like that kept us in check, but now we are really bumping into that 5 million, but not able to cross that on the daily averages just yet. And we may not be able to do that if we look at the sellers. Oh, all of a sudden a little bit of buying must have happened, because we're up to 5.1 million for the sellers, but 4.8 for the buyers. And so there is enough buying and selling happening at the moment to keep the average below 5 million. That means that if you put up a buy order, you will very likely be able to get your Plex. Gives me the feeling that maybe there's a little bit more supply that's coming in from returning players that want that liquid disk, maybe to buy ships to go and fly in faction warfare, maybe to buy ships so that they can buy their alliance logos for their favorite ships and all of that good stuff, which by the way will also still need to be expanded, of course, because it was mentioned in a video there as well. It's over 100 ships that have the alliance logo, but I think some are our favorites, especially Tech 2 ships aren't there. I can't wait to get it for the Ishtar, for instance. That would be one of my immediate focuses when that becomes available. But at the moment, Plex, in my opinion, stabilizing around that 5 million price range, and we're starting to move sideways a little bit at this point. For the multiple pilot train certificate, we are of course still under the influence of a massive sale that happened probably 2 weeks, 10 days ago, something like that. You can see the volumes, the largest we've seen in the whole year, so the price impact was substantial, pushing us down to below 1.5 billion for the train certificate. But the response feels a little bit faster as well. They're not willing to wait a couple of months before bringing the price a little bit more in line with what's happening with Plex itself. And so today's daily averages and yesterday's daily averages are already back just below the 175 billion. Now, it's not a full recovery. We need to be above that to have immediately recovered and gotten back on that trend, which is also normal, of course. We're talking big volumes over 5-6 days, but it is a substantial increase in price or a substantial reaction from the market. They took advantage, but it doesn't last very long this time. 1.7 billion for the sellers and 1.6 billion for the first buyer. So you see it's the buyers that are pretty aggressive here, pushing this line back up very quickly. Then we've got our skill extractors that should follow Plex pretty closely. Yeah, had a little bit more of a catch up to do as well here, but you can see in the last week or so we're definitely starting to plateau below the 600 million at the 590 million mark for the skill extractors. I think this is the correlation is back, which is normal when there's no specific sales or anything like that happening in pilot services. And we are talking actually a little bit more pressure here as well. 584 million for the sellers, 560 million for the buyers. Decent volumes here as well if you compare sellers to buyers, so we're starting to see a bit of pressure on the skill extractor market, which to me is going to be an indication that in all likeliness we'll have a very difficult time bringing the average price for Plex, especially the 5-day and 20-day moving average, above that 5 million mark. It's just not easy for EVE players to pony up over 5 million for a single Plex. The impact on the injectors then, here are the large skill injectors, and I think here we've got basically a ripple effect. Skill extractors had big volumes here, were low in price, and then went back up, which I think increased supply a little bit for the large scale injectors. You can see that that one went down from above 900 million to below 900 million and could stabilize at the current range. Who knows? Just below 900 for the sellers and 830 for the buyers. Slight bit of margin that's starting to open up here as well between sellers and buyers. You can see here, even about 10 days ago when the max price was still above the 900 million, you could see how the minimum price, so the buyers were starting to drop off, not willing to keep paying those very, very high prices. Small scale injectors following suit as well. Might have been a bit of a sale as well, although I'm not seeing the big volumes or anything like that. But again, I think it's a ripple from what happened with the extractors that then pushes through here. But here, definitely a new average all of a sudden as well. While we were just below 190 for a while, big spike up to 200 million. And then here is the recovery for the price down to 181 for the sellers, 167 for the buyers. And that would be 10, 14 million. Yep, starting to be, in my opinion, a slightly bit more margin there. Maybe buyers trying at this point to push these prices back down a little bit from these 1 year high ranges. And then of course for our alpha players, here is the daily alpha injector, and I'm actually pretty surprised by this, but we're still below 50 million. So we have stabilized quite substantially. Also after a very big sale, you can see here as well, a whole week, very big volumes, biggest volumes for the year if we count the entire week of well above average volumes. And as a result, we broke down to 40 million from a plateau of 70 million ISK for the daily alpha injector. We're still at 49 for the sellers, 45 for the buyers. Even historically, this was still an okay price where we said, I don't see CCP coming in right now to save the alpha injectors and keep their daily grind in a doable range. But to me, it does sort of confirm that this is something CCP is keeping an eye on. They don't want to have alpha players to be forced by the market to grind 100 million a day in order to get their daily alpha injector and basically give their character the most efficient trajectory that they can through the daily alpha injector market. It's a very strong hook, I think, into the game to have players come back, but it needs to be realistic. And so I do think that they will always intervene when it comes to the daily alpha injector. Maybe not immediately, like we're at 60, time to put in a sale to bring us back down. I don't think that's going to do that, but eventually that check will come, and that does mean that this might be on the one hand not a good one to hold for the long term, because I think inflationary forces will make this harder and harder for CCP, requiring more and more intervention. But it does mean that you might have a more predictable pattern than a lot of other goods in EVE Online, and that means buy right after a sale or during a sale, buy from the market when you've got a bottoming out like this, and then sell at a reasonable percentage, right? Don't try to double the value or anything like that. That's not gonna happen. Don't hold for the long term. Watch the market closely, sell on that upswing, and then, you know, take advantage of these CCP interventions. I think eventually this is what you create, of course. The market will respond to CCP intervention this way, and it will become harder and harder for them to keep things in check. So this is, to me, one of those most fascinating aspects of EVE Online. It is the market, and here this is an item where I'm starting to see a real pattern of basically central planning intervention done by CCP, and eventually the free market should always win out. And so my expectation is that they'll have to come in with interventions more and more often. We'll see, of course, over next months, maybe even years, if I'm right or wrong on that. And then finally we've got the hypercores as well, which for me is a little bit more of a feeling because I haven't seen lots of hypercore sales or anything like that as to real inflation expectation. And you can see we're at an all-time high. We are plateauing here a little bit as well, but we are plateauing at an all-time high of 530,000 ISK for the hypercores, 510 for the buyers, showing there is strong demand still even at these prices, and for something where you can't expect CCP to come in and artificially, you could say, increase the supply massively all of a sudden or anything like that. We are plateauing, but we are plateauing at the highest range of the entire year, and we basically had a full increase in price due to the changes in real life prices from 300,000 to above 500,000 ISK, and that could be here to stay. So I think the long-term expectation for the market is still inflationary and very expensive for the pilot services. Let's move on to the minerals next at 1445. And there we go. And as always, we'll start with titanium. Very good news for high-sec miners, which I did a little bit of last week as well. You can see the volumes are still extremely high, so there's still a lot of interest for titanium here. We pushed through the 4 ISK mark, and we actually have a volatile period with the daily average last week apparently closing in on 5 ISK on a single day. We're still a little bit all over the place, but that means that we basically need to, I think, settle down and find what is the new interest in potentially the new need for high-sec minerals, maybe because of extra production lines for faction dreadnoughts or something like that. And it seems to be well above 4 ISK, 444 for the sellers, 409 for the buyers as well. Pretty narrow margin there, showing strong demand. Buyers willing to go above 4 ISK is quite substantial. Volumes are picking up here though, 600 million, 245 million, and you've got this 1.5 billion units at 4 ISK. That is going to keep us in check. Other buy volumes are a little bit low though, so I do think we'll be closing in here on that 4 ISK, but this is a great time then for high-sec miners that have had the patience to wait for better times. Right now you can take advantage, sell your Veldspar, sell your titanium at better prices than we've had for the last 8-9 months or so. So pretty damn good. Next here we've got the pyrite chart that I think is a little bit in line with what I'm expecting to show up in titanium after we've settled down a little bit, but you can see that we spiked up here on pretty strong volumes up to 13 ISK, but we've got to settle just above the 10 apparently. 1150 for the sellers, almost 11 for the buyers, but you can see they are starting to pull back. They're starting to go below the 11 ISK here as well. So still the best price for also 7-8 months. Not sure if it was 9 there, but definitely the best price in a while. And someone actually mentioned that I could take out this today's daily average by adapting this bit here, but I'm not sure how you do a single day, so I'm not going to do that for this EVE talk. Then we would get cleaner charts potentially, but it's alright. We basically still have a very good price for pyrite as well, although the margin has collapsed and we're basically probably in that new situation. It is demand driven that we've pushed up a little bit in price. Now Mexon basically anticipated to that. You can see how we broke through the 75 a couple of months ago and now has slowly been meeting that basically same range as for titanium and pyrite, a little bit higher than what we've seen since April here, but not by all that much. And so currently Mexlon is going for just below 70 for the sellers and 68 for the buyers. So I do think we'll settle down here, that this is a price range, the new reality. While May, June, July were very bad months and you were probably just getting just below 60, you're getting just below 70 now for your Mexlon. So sometimes patience does win out. High-sec miners looking pretty good. Focusing on titanium is probably what you'll do, but I would start to diversify already, because those new supplies will cause these prices to pull back a little bit. Might as well add in a bit of Mexlon and pyrite and take advantage of the current prices. Moving on to low-sec, here is the Isogen chart that has stayed around the 500 ISK mark at this point, so I'm basically expecting some bigger sell orders to come in, and there it is, 100 million at 507.90. But every other competition is bumping into that sell order constantly. 490 for the buyers as well. So we can say that Isogen has basically responded in the same way to the expansion. More activity, more ships to build, more demand, and so we pushed up to the 500 ISK mark, which is the highest range for the year as well. And compared to about a year ago, if we go here, we're talking 120 to 500 ISK. That's definitely one of the big winners, where patience does win out. And I would honestly, feel comfortable now with selling most of my Isogen. If you've got really a lot of it, of course, don't spook the market too much, but I don't see us go to like 750 or anything like that. We might go a little bit higher, right, chewing through a couple more of these big sell orders, but I don't see, even here, the most aggressive sellers are keeping it in check to like an 800 as the more optimistic version, so don't see that 750, 1000 or anything like that to come into play all too soon. I think here normal market forces will start to assert themselves, and it's okay to be selling as well. Then we've got the Noxium market that also turned the corner last week, went to 1000 disc last month, had to give back some of those gains, but you can see we are getting a little bit closer to that yet again at 940 for the sellers and 927 for the buyers. Very strong demand here yet again, and here on the sell order volumes, this does feel in line with what's manageable for players and groups to bring to the market. So Noxium also back a little bit more expensive. It's a slightly different story. Basically what we see here is that in that period, January to April, Noxium was a real bottleneck. It was actually the most expensive mineral for the Tech 1 range, more expensive than Zydrine at the time, more expensive than Megasite at the time. It was really expensive. The king of minerals was actually Noxium coming from Losec, but this does also show the adaptability of players, as after that, through the summer, I think players have taken advantage of the lull in activity to basically get their low sec activities in order to rearrange everything so that we got ample supply, bring the price down to about half the price from the high point here below 750, and then actually maybe increased activity, some excitement for the new ships, all of that started to take over as well. And this is what you would expect a little bit more to happen, more market forces, more variation in what happens. So we pushed up to 1000 on a little bit of speculation maybe, and then we had to, that was a little bit too much too quickly, and then now we're going back up because everything else is also actually deciding on a higher range for these minerals. But then we come to our most manipulated or potentially manipulated segment, which is nullsec, of course. Here is the Zydrine chart, still topping 3000 ISK, crazy high price. Turns out that these are the real winners for the minerals here, because just in the last couple of months we added in another 50%, and compared to last year they tripled the price from 1000 to 3000, which, you know, Isogen is still probably doing a little bit better than that on the full 1 year, but it is very impressive how things have completely changed here since May, since the change also in the subscription cost. So that must have had an impact on nullsec, and a very sharp rise with 3000 ISK for Zydrine. Just below that probably, yeah, 2950 for the sellers, 28 for the buyers. Bit of margin that opens up there as well, so the market is not willing to take that lying down either. So they are going to try, I think, here those buyers to you know, show a little bit of patience, and to show that you really want to sell your Zydrine quickly. You might need to lower your prices a little bit, but for now the suppliers are having absolutely none of that. You can see here how Megasite was brought down to less than 2000 ISK on some volume, so probably someone had that impatience and said, all right, I'm going to take advantage of all of this, I'm willing to drop the price. But look at how quickly we recover right back to 2700 for the sellers, 2700 for the buyers as well. In Megasite it's much more of a cutthroat situation, where sellers are putting the knife on the buyers, and they're actually caving at the moment, bringing their buy prices above 2700 as well. So a lot of action here, very expensive Megasite as well, and this should have an impact on Tech 1 chip prices. They are probably pretty expensive at the moment, which I personally think is still not necessarily exactly where CCP wants to end up, because of course, from my personal perspective, this just makes Tech 2 value so good at these current crazy low prices. They're great compared to tactical destroyers, Tech 3 cruisers, but now also Tech 1 ships are becoming more expensive because of these minerals. That just makes them all the more attractive. It might be that CCP is okay with that, because I think you need Omega 4 Tech 2 ships, but on the other hand, it does mean that you get a lot of power for not a lot of ISK, and that's basically, I think, not in line with the natural progression. So my expectation is still, which is why I'm mostly buying and holding in Tech 2, we'll take a look at that later of course, is still that eventually CCP is going to turn the screws on that as well. And then finally we've got Morphite, that is, well, a little bit of volatility showing up as well, as we went to or just below 40,000 for those buyers. It's sellers that are basically not willing to go that low. 43,500, 600 for the sellers, just below 40k for the buyers. So a bit of margin opened up here by the sellers who said this is the lowest price in a couple of months. We're actually holding off on that, but then higher prices means more supply, means that the prices come back down. Here as well, we do have, in my opinion, more healthy market interaction, which I think will, at least 500 price range for Isogen, will start to show here as well. We might stop with the step up, a slight pullback, step up, start to move sideways. I think we'll start to see a little bit more variation as we go above the 500 disc. All right, next up we've got the PI market at 25 minutes. There we go, and let's see here if there's any change, but of course in the last weeks and months we've had, that does feel like it might be a little bit of a change. We've had extremely expensive prices, and especially with the expansion and the expectation of the expansion and those new dreadnoughts, I feel like we had very, very strong demand across the PI markets, but to my surprise here, well, maybe not, of course, we are starting to lose a little bit of ground with broadcast nodes trying to get below the 2 million mark on the chart, and you can also see those minimum prices starting to go lower here as well. So we are talking for the sellers just above 2 million, but this is the pattern of something that could have happened. We'll actually take a look at the Tranquility Trading Tower as well here. 1.4 million, that's a big margin that has opened up here between sellers and buyers, because demand is starting to dry up a little bit, at least for the broadcast nodes. Next up, we've got our construction blocks that are below 10,000 discs, trying to break out at the tail end, but are they managing to do that? Well, sellers are at 10.2, buyers are at 9.7. That's still a pretty narrow margin. That's still pretty strong demand here. So construction blocks still very much in sell territory. But here is a little bit of a difference. Here is coolants that even before this had a great period early in the year, 10, 11k easily gotten from coolants. Then, right, May, June, a little bit of a bad period, but very strong summer here as well. Most of August you could get close to 10k, then above that went to 12,000 here as well. But we are starting to see signs that oversupply might be back on the books, with 10,300 for most sellers, someone a little bit more aggressive here, but 9,300 for the buyers. Again, a 1,000 margin between sellers and buyers is a little bit more than what we're used to, and especially once you go here to the 10.8, then you've got a larger margin showing that demand is just not following, and maybe returning players as well, starting up their PI habit, is increasing supply a little bit too much for those crazy high prices. And just for, to try and be open there, I decided to liquidate a lot of my PI last week. So I went into JITA, took my PI container, emptied out everything that was in really big numbers, and just dumped it all on the market with just a slight undercut. So I was still pretty aggressive with my sell prices, but I did decide this was the time that I want ISK for my PI. Enriched uranium, then you can start to see the pressure as well. Now this is still a great price, 12,000 disc for the sellers, 11,270 for the buyers. Still not that much of a margin, so this is still in a pretty strong spot. But if you look at this chart over the last month or so, it's pretty obvious that we're starting to build up a little bit of pressure, and I think it is because there is more supply and more stable supply, but at the same time demand is probably gonna start to drop off a little bit as well. Integrity response drones then, countering my story, makes its way back above 2.5 million, 2.6 for the sellers, 2.5 for the first buyer, but then that next buyer already 2.45. Very careful, bit of margin opening up here, so this dip below 2.5 million, it could happen again very quickly. Mechanical parts next, same sign for that pressure. You can see we've left the 10,000 disc behind us, 9.8 for the sellers, 9,000 for the buyers, right? They're pulling back as well as more supply comes in, keeping that 800, 1,000 disc, 10% margin here between sellers and buyers, which is actually a normal margin. But to have a normal margin on a downward trend shows that demand is not there. Miniature electronics then, they are still very strong, but again, if you look at this chart over the last couple of months, you're starting to see a bit of pressure. 12 for the sellers, 11,320 for the buyers, doing decently well, but yeah, pressure might just be mounting. Nanofactories then, other advanced materials actually surprisingly stable. 900k to 740 though. Yeah, again, I think we had like 800k before. Narrower margin, stronger demand. It is starting to show signs of wavering. Organic motor applicators coming a bit down from its high range as well. Well below 800 for the sellers and below 700,000 for the buyers. Don't think we've seen that in a while. Recursive computing modules edging back to 1 million, but again, there's one buyer coming in at 1 million ISK, and then it's 900,000. Then you've got our 10% margin again, so it's one buyer here that's keeping us in check, but we could get back down below 1 million pretty quickly. And then robotics. Here, basically I have to rectify what I've been saying over the last couple of weeks. I thought if we could maintain those high prices, coolants and everything well above 10,000 is then we should see 100k come back into play for most specialized PI materials. But of course, now that we're seeing that demand drop off, I don't think we're gonna make it. Again, I decided to sell at this point because this is another potential plateau that is forming here. Robotics at 82,500, which is less than last week, and buyers below 80k. Still very strong, of course, but can I see us keep building on this? Honestly, not really, considering the rest of the markets. Rocket fuel still doing really well, 13,400, 12,300 though, so here is our 10% margin coming into play yet again, so this could change very quickly. 20-day moving average, you can see how that's starting to top off here as well, so be careful with your PI. Self-harmonizing power cores doing really well as well, 2.4 million to 2.24 million, so again, it is the 10% margin. We are opening up that gap a little bit, but here at 1 year high prices, so can't complain about that. Smart fab units though showing signs of peaking as well. 88,000 for the sellers, but 78 for the buyers. So you can see we try to get to 100k here, but it is not something that will be maintained for most of these. Sterile conduits then, we're talking 1.2 to 1.1 million. That's still pretty strong demand. And then we got our supercomputers that just touch 100k, but sellers coming in just below that. And then 85,000 for the buyers. That's really a bit of a warning sign. Honestly, that's a 15% margin between sellers and buyers. That's more than taxes. That is, in my opinion, pressure. I think we will start to move down there. Synthetic oil then peaking at 11, 12k, something like that. Yeah, a little bit above 11 on the 5-day moving average, down to 10.7. And look at those buyers, 9.5. They're starting to again open up that gap. We've got some exceptions. Here are synthetic synapses, 130,000 to 114. Could be event related, could also just be faction warfare, more explosions, more stuff happening, maybe even the Alliance tournament, more demand for implants, and thus we actually have a 1 year high point for synthetic synapses. But again, if you would have them lying around, I would be selling them if you look at this 1 year chart, and then you keep the rest of the market in mind. Transcranial microcontrollers, again, was above 100k, was able to demand above 100k for a couple of months. There we go, 99,870 for the first seller, 91,000 for the buyers. And then water-cooled CPU, this one, it's definitely interesting. Look at these volumes as well, and price still going to 1 year high point, but it is a refined PI material with a 1 year high point of 7,500. Still a big gap here as well. Buyers at 5.8. So this was basically our most underperforming refined PI material. That basically has a little bit of a catch up on that upswing, a little bit late to the party, you could say, but I don't see it breaking out that much more. And then finally, the wetware mainframes. You always have an exception to the rule. The trends are never uniform. Very pronounced 1 year high point, 2.1 million, not enough supply. Buyers at 1.8 million, so still having that gap. But of course, with this type of supply, the question is, will there be enough players that can all of a sudden bring wetware mainframes to the market to take advantage of this? Or are the buyers forced up to a new range? That is the question. It's up in the air, but considering everything else here, I wouldn't bet on the new range just yet here. We could see supply bring things back under control very quickly. So yeah, for the PI market, still great times, of course, but like I said, I pulled the trigger. I sold most of my stuff because I'm starting to see more and more signs that yeah, we are seeing a little bit less demand and maybe a little bit too much supply at the moment. Next up, advanced moon materials, 3430. Like that, and let's see if anything is happening here. Crystalline carbonite basically moved up well above 100 disk, but showing the first signs of pressure here, 113 to 112, so that demand is strong enough to close that gap here completely. Where do we go from here? That's the real question, of course. And you've got a 20-day moving average and a 5-day moving average that are crossing. So more supply, more momentum, could very easily break that, then lookouts below. It is not a short thing, of course, because we are post the expansion, there are new ships, there's more stuff to produce. Maybe there is enough demand now to keep us in check. I don't think a full recovery is on the books just yet. But I wouldn't bet on a complete collapse back to a price below 100 disk, although I think it could happen. So I'd be very careful with investing in advanced PI materials. I would basically still be looking for 1-year low points, lowest charts before I pull the trigger on that. And that's probably not going to be right now. Next for Caldari, it's titanium carbide that's continuing to climb actually, so that's some momentum for the last couple of months. You can see 5-day and 20-day actually still opening up a little bit more of a gap. Very impressive, 140 to 133, not enough supply for the market, so that's a sign that maybe we are looking at a real bottom forming here. But let's take a look at the other first. Here is Ferrite carbide, and this one is belying that completely. You can see how we crossed that 20-day, and then the momentum just carried us right back to 100 ISK. 102 to 99.84, buyers below 100 disk once again for Ferrite carbide. So we are really seeing mixed pictures, mixed signals here in the advanced moon materials, with Ferrite carbide telling us nope, supplies are still way too high, and this is all coming right back down, while our Caldari brethren are having a much better time really building back, and if they could get back to 150, they really would be lowering their 1-year losses quite substantially. So it's very impressive to see what the Caldari titanium carbide market is doing. But let's take a look at the Amar one. That one is also warning us that yeah, we could cross that 20-day, and then you get enough momentum to go back down. And look at these minimum prices, they do go very low, 108 to 104, and very quickly below 100 comes into play yet again. Anything happening in the metamaterials then? Here is Photonic for Galente, very flat, not able to go above 7.5, even below 7,000 for the sellers, 6.1 for the buyers, still a big margin here as well. That's just more pressure. For nonlinear for Caldari, also landing again on 10k, below that for the sellers, 9.5 for the buyers, that is clearly pressure. Minmatar is coming back down again, 5-day moving, starting to cross 20-day moving, so 10k could come back into play by next week. Buyers are already there below 10,000 disks, so still a little bit more supply could do that. And then Terahertz Metamaterials already gave up basically 9.5 to 9.3 here for Terahertz Metamaterials. So my feeling here honestly is that this is not good for people that are looking for higher prices, and if you're looking to invest, well, look at something like this, right? 9.5, this gap is closed. You can probably put up a sell order just below, just above 9,300 disk, and you're gonna grab all of that Terahertz Metamaterials. If you try to get something close to that to show up on the markets, that's around here that you're buying on this 1-year chart. Definitely not bad. A pullback like this seems to be what I would look for to invest, but I would be again very careful. Let's see what the other advanced materials tell us. Here fermionic condensates, also a bit of a bump, but look at the pressure. Look at us right here, again crossing the Rubicon, you could say, 5-day, 20-day, back on the downside, so 38 to 35. Yeah, at 50 looked really great for a couple of days, but supplies saw that as well, suppliers. Ferrogel not able to go above 20k. And then here we get fuller rights, pressure is back below 500 discs, so that's definitely a bit of capitulation. Market giving up as well on better prices here. Hypersynaptic fibers actually in the upside at the moment after very quiet couple of months, 6,600. But look at those buyers not moving here, 5.8. It's just a gap that well, actually buyers have moved up a little bit because we were below 5,000 discs a couple of weeks ago. All right, buyers moved up here as well, but again, if you look at everything else, I'm personally expecting new supplies to crash this very quickly, although we are seeing a decent chunk of buyers that have come in here, so that's interesting. Then we got our nano transistors. Here's the crossing again, so we're not going anywhere. Phenolic composites. We're hesitating, right? We're hesitating to just plow right through everything, but I personally think it's gonna happen. So 1200 to 1100. Pressurized oxidizers doing a little bit of a bump right now. Not able to go above 10k, so I don't think that's too much. Note 9 now to A3. Reinforced carbon fibers. Second bump, all right, and then ceramic fibers coming back down. So I'm seeing a little bit more volatility, but for the long-term trends, I would not bet on much higher prices or full recoveries from a year ago or anything like that in advanced moon materials. The good news though is that we are seeing some volatility, some high points that actually break out above anything we've seen in the last couple of months here, last half year even. So that could be good news for a bit more volatility in Take 2 ships, which is personally what I'm hoping for, so that we can get some maybe stealth bomber trades or something like that going. But for like bets on substantially higher advanced moon materials prices, not anytime soon. Again, same story as what I was telling here with the minerals. In my opinion, not unless, of course, there is a CCP intervention, and that is something to keep in mind. And that is why I do have advanced moon materials that I bought at these low points that are ready, and Take 2 ships as well. My bet is actually on CCP coming in and doing something that will drive prices up rather than down for Take 2. But I could be wrong on that, of course. I don't have the inside information. Next up, Take 2 ships coming in at 41.20. There we go. Let's go through the list and see if there's anything of interest. Well, here is the pressure for the Basilisk, not at a 1 year low point yet. Sellers coming in at 115, buyers below 110. But yeah, if you don't have a Basilisk yet and you're interested in this, this is the right chart to be making a move on it, right? 5-day moving average actually still opening up from the 20-day moving average, so still pulling away on the downside. Daily average is still below everything as well. Here, there's a lot of sell pressure. It's very easy to grab a buy order for a Basilisk at the moment. Then we've got the Cerberus here, a little bit more hesitation, right? Everything is starting to come together at the current slow downtrend. 127 to 117. It's a little bit more buying that's happening here, so you're not buying at the very best time, but it's still, of course, on this full 1 year chart, extremely inexpensive. Then we've got the Curse. Actually a little bit expensive at the moment, especially if you bought at the lowest price possible, so probably below 130. Selling at 150, you get a small trade here. Buyers though, look at how careful they are. 135, 3 ships, and then we're back below 130, so this will probably turn around very quickly. Will we test new lows? I don't know, of course. Damnation, testing new lows right now, so I think I bought one below 250, or is it a 250? No, I think it was the EOS that I bought at 254, so I think I bought that one below 250 here or here, not sure anymore, but you can buy well below that price now. 220 for the first seller, 230 for most, 220 for the buyers as well. So this is another overflow, but that's very interesting. This is something that personally you would, in my opinion, you would not expect. You would not expect someone to just sell damnations by the boatload, basically. For the damnation, even selling 3, 4, 5 of them is by the boatload, and to bump into the fact that they were selling too many for the market, and that one of them went stuck into a buy order. That is a clear sign that Take 2 at the moment is massively oversupplied. And so yeah, you're grabbing your damnation for 220 million, which just last year was going for 400, 350 super easily. So that does show that Take 2 is very, very inexpensive, and that players are just making too money for the market. Then we've got the Deacon that is well below 20 million, not at the 1 year low point just yet, although it starts to look like maybe some pressure is mounting here. 17, and you're buying below 15 million. Yeah, a little bit too early in my opinion to make a move on that. Then we get the Eagle. That's another very pronounced 1 year low point. Everything is coming together again. So 110 for the sellers, 106 for the buyers. You're buying Eagles below 110 million. I've got a couple cheap ones of these already, but definitely, you know, that I basically bought too early for the longer term. But if you want that Take 2 invest in, if you want to follow that along, this is really good. Then we get the EOS here, 266 to 236. So you can try a buy order if you want to, but it's going to be a little bit harder because that 5-day moving average is above the 20-day. There's clearly some hesitation in the market here on the EOS very specifically, which means you might need to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't think a 236, even a 239 is going to trigger very easily with these sell prices, but yeah, something more towards the 250 is definitely going to trigger. And remember, I bought mine for 254, so you're still doing way better than me. Then we get the Aries. That's actually at a pretty high point at the moment. 48,000 to 40,000. Might be tied to faction warfare stuff. I'm not really sure. But an interdictor doing actually pretty well. So another potential trade if you want to sell, right? You bought below 30, close to 30, sell at the moment at 50. That's pretty damn good. The smaller ships, again, are potentially where the trades are at. Then we get the Flycatcher. Pretty low but hesitating, so we're basically just too late to buy at around 37, although 36 for the sellers, 42 for the buyers. It is still possible. Our Guardian away from the bottom, but of course that's relative. 120 to 107. I think a Guardian below 110 is still pretty damn good. Heretics starting to move up a little bit, so interdictors, clearly something is happening there a bit in the market. You could have bought these for 30 million. We are selling them at 38. It's not a great trade, but clearly it's going to be harder to pick up the cheapest heretics at the moment. Then we get our Hound, and this is what I love. Not sure where this is coming from, but alright, the Hound touched 15 million. I think I mentioned it last week to keep an eye on this one and to consider buying. And yeah, the trade's already in. 21 million now for the sellers, 18 million for the buyers. Starts to be a little bit substantial, very, very big volumes, of course. So someone bought a huge amount of Hounds, 750 of them, bringing that price back up. But here's your sell opportunity. Here is your small tidbits of volatility that are starting to push through into the markets. And yeah, frigates, smallest ships tend to be the ones where it's easiest to get that done. So you know, if you followed along last week, you got a couple of cheap Hounds that you managed to grab. You can definitely try to take some profits. Again, you won't be alone, so be careful. Don't put 20 of them in a single sell order. That's never gonna hold, but slowly, you know, a couple at a time, I do think that there's profits to be taken in the Hound. Ikitursa showing signs that, yeah, market's hesitating to stay below 500 million, 520 to 480. Then for the Ishtar, actually, yeah, PvE ship away from the bottom as well. It's still very cheap, 142 to 130 million. Started the year at 200 million, but you don't get the cheapest Ishtars anymore. Then we get the Kirin, starting to go back below 20. Buyers are at 20 though, so that's also, you know, we're potentially a little bit too late for the very best prices. Then we've got the Manticore, so it's gonna probably be across the board for the stealth bombers, but I think I must have mentioned a buy opportunity for the Manticore, especially when we broke the 15 million here. So you could have bought probably 16, 17 very easily. Well, it's 21 million. That's actually already coming back down. So we shot up. We're basically too late. We shot up here. We managed to do a 25 million. But this is going to be the problem, of course. Supplies can come in very quickly. So if you look at the last couple of days, 23, so 23, yeah, there it happened. Right here, you can see that up to 30, 27, and then we start to move back in after everything was bought. That wasn't bolted down probably up to a 27.5 or something like that. But we're filling that gap very quickly. So again, if you put in 10, 20 like this, like that, nope, that's not the way to do this. It's one at a time, two at a time, but take your full profits for the entire trade. So it is happening. Stealth bomber volatility does seem to be here, but it's very difficult to take a lot of profit, which is why I always warn to not overbuy either. Same story right here with the Nemesis. Huge buying happening, but very quickly. Well, we've got a data point here, a daily average at 25 million. We are already back down to 18 for the sellers, 16 for the buyers. So basically, we're too late on that one. Nighthawk starting to come down as well. That's potentially a trade. I didn't see that happen in command ships, but here is one where it did. Pressure is starting to build though. Then we've got our Oneros. Flat on that low range above 100 million, buyers at 92, so you're still grabbing really cheap logistics cruisers. I would personally recommend a couple of logistics cruisers to hold on to. I have a Basilisk, I have a couple of what's the Amar one. Let me see here. Well, I've got a couple of the Amar one for sure. I've got an Oneros as well because I mean it is a force multiplier on the battlefield, and if CCP doesn't necessarily come in on all Tech 2 ships, I think that the logistics cruisers will be considered a little bit too cheap for what they bring, and they might do something about that. But here's the Purifier, same spike again. We're too late, happened basically just after Eve Talk last week, I would say, back down to that 17.5 range very quickly. Then here is the Rook, flat above 150. So not the right time to sell. Sabres starting to come down, so this is the right looking chart for buying some Sabres. 38 million to 36.5. I mean, you're buying well below 40, which is not that bad, but I'd love to see this have a little bit more momentum. Scalpel, flat in between, wouldn't make a move on that. Scimitar, where are the buyers for this one? Starting to come back up a little bit. 113 on that one, 130 for the sellers. Then we get the Sleipnir. It's the Guardian. There we go. Actually, I have a couple of Guardians. That's what I was looking for there. But yeah, then we get the Sleipnir. That one doing a little bit better as well. So command ships, at least some of them, have had a tradable spike here and are not really willing to just dive right back down to the cheapest prices. Then we get our Vagabond. That's flat. And then we get our Zarmas, that's coming back in at 400 million, 417 to 400 million. So for Tech 2, it's starting to be a little bit more mixed, right? It's not just every single ship is down the drain or anything like that. A couple of stealth bombers have some volatilities. A couple of command ships are clearly moving into higher ranges after a lot of volume and very big spikes and things like that. For advanced movements though, most of it is showing we are still oversupplied, so that could translate into oversupply eventually in the Tech 2 ships, but again, I'm not sure how long CCP is gonna be happy with Oneros, advanced logistics cruisers, Tech 2 resistance and all of that stuff with buy orders at 93 million. Although they've got a lot on their plate already, I think eventually it is something that CCP will actually move on. Next up, we've got the Tech 3 ship market coming in at 52.20. There we go. As always, we start with the destroyers, but it's usually very calm here. So you can see a little bit of downward pressure still on the Confessor at 46 million to 43 million. All right, first really the lowest buy prices we've seen in a while here as well. If you absolutely want to take a look at this, this is basically the cheapest we've seen the Confessor in a while, and it should be possible to grab, let's say, a Confessor for 43 million. Maybe a tiny trade is in there potentially, but you can also see how quiet this market is. So you are really gambling on something happening that is going to bring in a little bit of volatility. Next here we get the Hecate, talk about lack of volatility, right? Not even the min-max prices showing up on this one, staying above 50 for most of the time. 51 to 49 million for the first buyer. So this might drop off a little bit here as well, but I would not see any buy opportunities here just yet. Then we get the Jackdaw, right? Same story here a little bit. Minimum prices starting to come back down towards the lowest range in pretty much the entire year. Average price is coming down below 50 as well. 51 for the sellers, 47 for the buyers. I mean, the Jackdaw is a great ship, so I would say a buy order if you want one or a couple, just so that you can fly them yourself. That does make sense, but trade wise I would be very careful. And then finally we've got the Zwepel here as well. That is landing on its new range after basically going above 50 with all the others. Then it is the least popular one, so you can see how the volumes are pretty damn low. 45 million to 43 million, not that much demand. Yeah, you're buying cheap Zwepels, that's basically the situation. But for these tactical destroyers, not enough volatility. It looks like it's a good time to buy. Maybe Confessor, maybe a couple of Jackdaws, Zwepels, things like that. Hecate waited out a little bit. I think we can push the averages below 50 million here. But it would be buy to use, not for active trading, in my opinion. Then we get our cruisers. Here is the Legion. There we go, sell opportunity in the Legion. Finally, we got some buy opportunities over the last month, I think, where I mentioned definitely below 160 on a couple of occasions. You are selling Legions for 220. With that same warning, if you've got a dozen of them or so, you're just gonna crash the price. You're not gonna get rid of them, but 1-2 of them, yeah, pretty easy for you to take, well, a 90 million profit. No, 160, excuse me, it was 160. So it would be a 50 to 60 million isk profit. I'd still be pretty damn happy with that. So there's your Legion sell opportunity. The Loki hesitating, and actually buyers starting to drop off towards the 180. Not there yet, 194 to 180. So I would wait a little bit longer for a buy opportunity, but in the last couple of months you could have easily bought below 180, so let's keep that one in mind. Then we get the Proteus. Here we go as well, 240 million, 222, although I never called the Proteus the one that I would buy in. I did mention, in my opinion, that it's a Tech 3 cruiser market where your potential trades lie. So if you were willing to pony up and buy like a Proteus well below 180, even then you've got a trade, but probably a 170, 175 must have easily been possible. Then you are looking at a sell opportunity right now. And then the Tango is still slowly recovering from its sell opportunity last month, so that's not yet in buy territory. 201 to 194. We would need a little bit of patience, but yeah, here we go. Cruisers, Proteus, you're taking profits now. Legion, you are taking profits now. Loki, well, I hope you're loaded up. If you're not, you may want to try now, considering what we're seeing in all of the others. But it's very interesting. That not a lot of volumes can push these prices up, and that does make them very juicy potential trade targets here. You do need a little bit of patience though. It doesn't happen very often. It used to be that every 3 months or so we could do this stuff with Tech 2 ships. Unfortunately, those times seem to be over. Then finally, we've got the requests from last week, which is going to be for Tech 2 drones. And then for next week, I'll just warn you guys already, someone wanted me to look at the new faction ships, so we're going to take a look at some faction ships then. But yep, keep them coming. If you get requests for stuff from me to take a look at for the extra products, I can definitely just fill out the list and then plan it for the week after what I've planned so far. But yeah, for this week, it is Tech 2 drones, and that's coming in at 5720. Like that. So it's gonna be combat drones mostly, I think. Let's start with the light ones, maybe see if anything is happening here. Now it's gonna be tricky because you don't have advanced light drones or anything like that, so we're gonna have to look through this this way. But that's definitely a bit more juicy for trading, although of course your range 350 to 300,000 disc, yeah, for most of the year here, then a spike up to 500,000, coming back down, and at the moment we're clearly a little bit above average here. 350 for the sellers, 311 for the buyers, so rather expensive. Acolyte Tech 2 drones, Hobgoblin Tech 2. Ooh, definitely. I think this is the reason why this was requested, because they did mention that something happened not that long ago. So while we were usually playing with the 300,000, a little bit above, a little bit below for most of the year, then one bump but nothing too consequential, we basically moved Hobgoblin 2s to 400,000 discs, so that's a third extra for the sellers, 360 for the buyers. They are forced up here as well. Then we've got the Hornet that actually had a spike in September, 500k twice. Sell opportunities here, buy at 300, sell at 500k, and at the moment I would say it's still a little bit above average, 370 to 328, so slightly expensive. And then the Warrior 2s are actually breaking out now. 1.5 million, not sure where this is coming from, but alright. 500,000 for the buyers. Is this manipulation? I mean, it is doable probably in this market, although it takes a lot of effort. I'm not sure if it's worth it. But even then, if we disregard this late spike here, 360 above 350, definitely feels like rather expensive. I'm gonna move straight to the heavy attack drones just to take a feel of this. So here the Berserker, right, also definitely expensive on the 1 year chart, 1.8 million, 1.9 actually for the sellers. Ogre 2s had their September spike up to 2.5 million, actually coming back down below 1.5 million, but still very close to that, so rather expensive. Praetor 2 having a spike right now, or recovering from that spike at 2.5 million, and then the Wasp 2 actually has a spike now as well. So basically, the smaller you go, the more chance you seem to have for volatility in the Tech 2 market. And while we were constantly looking at Tech 2 ships, it looks like there was some action in the Tech 2 drones. Very, very interesting. I'm gonna take a quick look at Tech 2 Sentry drones then as well, just to get a feel of this one. And man, this is very nostalgic, I'll be honest. Here is the bouncer market. So buy below a million, right? Buy right now, buy below a million, and then sell at 1.5 million. 1, 2, 3, 4, a fifth time at 2 million. So 6, 7 sell opportunities with a 50% margin here on the bouncer 2s. Very, very impressive. So if you're looking for that Twitch trading, I mean, we are talking then of profits of 500,000. So it's again, just one stealth bomber trade makes up for a lot of Tech 2 trades right here. So it's not like it's going to make huge money, but it is predictable. Here it is doable. You clearly have your buy opportunities below a million and your sell opportunities above 1.5 million, and you've had several of them through the year. This used to be the stealth bomber chart, guys. This used to be how I would trade my Tech 2 ships, and I would constantly see these opportunities. So that's very, very impressive. Curator, Amar, a little bit more stable, actually not that expensive at the moment either. And then the Guardian, also way more muted, although 1, 2, 3 here, sell opportunities heading towards 1.5 million. You're actually buying well below a million, so your margin is different. But right now, look at that. The Guardian, Guards 2 also had its opportunity. And then the Warden, not a great start, but here sell, 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 and even a sell at 2.5, a buy close to a million, sell at above 2 million, sell here again. There is a little bit more trade opportunity, it seems, in these Tech 2 drones. We'll take a look at some more. I think maybe I'm interested in the salvage Tech 2 drones. Let's see what these have been doing. Also a spike right here at 1.5 million, a little bit above a million, so I wouldn't call them any, basically average price, I would say at the moment. Tech 2 mining drones could be interesting as well. Here are the ice harvesting drones, definitely a little bit more stable, and still rather expensive compared to, let's say, the last 6 months. And then Tech 2 mining drones, bit of a spike here, but other than that, far more muted. Logistics then, we could take a quick look at that. So these aren't traded enough basically to give us really good charts, unfortunately, I would say. Yeah, that's just not the volume, so that's not that interesting. Fighters, carrier related, I don't think that that's too interesting. Maybe, I don't think there are Tech 2s for these, so that's basically gonna be it. Well, we can still take a look at the mediums then. Here is the Vespa. Not that much volatility, but definitely expensive at the moment. Valkyrie 2 also lovely spike right here at the tail end in the last week or so. Infiltrator 2 had this happen in September again, so that does come back, but is expensive still. And our Hammerhead 2s are also expensive. So our combat drones, Tech 2 combat drones definitely feel expensive. A couple of them have crazy volatility, definitely trade potential in there. And overall, very interesting suggestion here. I thought we would see a far more stable situation in these drones, but keeping in mind, of course, we are talking about something that costs 1-2 million compared to a 10-20 million stealth bomber, 100+ million command ship. Obviously, a single trade in your Tech 2 ships makes up for a lot of trading done in these drones, but there are clearly opportunities in these Tech 2 drones when it comes to actively trading. So if that's what you're looking for, you may need to step down from ships to drones in order to get that action. So thank you very much for that suggestion. Very interesting charts and markets, and yeah, rather expensive Tech 2 drones, combat drones at the moment would be my general feeling. And that will be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.